You ever wonder if there was a secret formula to make blood sugars feel more effortless and just be controlled? Now, while this isn't a cure, I can promise you that if you stick around to the end, I am going to demystify why blood sugars seem to be different day to day and how it seems like there's no rhyme or reason to managing diabetes. But if you've been around here for any length of time, you know that I like the idea of precision and confidence in my blood sugar control. So if you want to stick around, I've got some stories for you, I got some lessons, and a tip that I believe might just be the saving grace for people living with diabetes, because for me at least, it certainly changed the way that I manage my diabetes entirely. Now, if you don't know who I am, my name is Matt Van de Vecht. I'm a certified master fitness trainer and nutritionist. I also wrote a best-selling book called The Blood Sugar Freedom Formula, and recently, actually last week, I was on live TV talking about type 1 diabetes twice, and on the news had a chance to chat with other type 1 diabetics like myself as well. Fantastic conversations, and truly what brought up the topic today that I want to discuss with you, which is demystifying blood sugars and really trying to figure out what the heck's going on and why it is so difficult to manage blood glucose levels day to day when we've all been given these cookie cutter approaches by our medical team. Now, if you are also new here, you probably don't know this, but we like to take care of things ourselves. And so when we look at diabetes, we recognize, of course, that the medical team has a role to play, but it is not the entire role. That's why we call ourselves the renegades. So the reason being is that doctors give us these cookie cutter approaches that are great to start, but don't quite get you to the finish line, right? They'll help you to survive with diabetes, but not quite to thrive. So today I want to share with you a bit about the mysterious fluctuations, what's lying underneath the surface of your blood sugars, but truly what your blood sugars are also trying to tell you. They're leaving a breadcrumb trail of hints and clues, and all you got to do is put on your diabetes detective hat and get curious about this. So, without any further ado, let's jump in to today's topic, the present and past impacts on your blood sugar. So if you read my book, The Blood Sugar Freedom Formula, actually turn to page, I don't know what page it is, but chapter 7. Okay, go to chapter 7 with me if you got it, because in chapter 7 I discussed this at length, but the 3 different variable considerations, right? So there's over 50 plus variables of things that impact blood sugars: stress, sleep, nutrition, exercise, your insulin resistance that day. But speaking of, I do want to talk about insulin resistance, because a lot of people think that insulin resistance is either a yes or a no thing. You either are insulin resistant or you're not. Some people think that insulin resistance is just for type 2 diabetics, which there's some truth to that and how type 2 can begin, but that's not the end of the discussion. See, insulin resistance is actually a state of being for your cells, where your cells are resistant to insulin. And that insulin can be manually injected or bolused, like for us living with type 1, or it could be the insulin produced by a working pancreas. See, so type 2 diabetes, their pancreas oftentimes still does produce enough insulin, but the cells are insulin resistant, so they don't get to use all of it. So the pancreas has to push out more insulin to still get the glucose into the cells, to transport it, right? So their blood sugars tend to run a little bit higher because it takes the pancreas more effort, more time to produce enough insulin to get the glucose from the bloodstream to the cells or to storage like muscle or liver or adipose tissue, okay? Now, with type 1 diabetes, we give insulin to match our food or our stress, or in some cases even exercise, okay? But understanding that insulin resistance just means that you might have to take more insulin for the same sandwich that you ate yesterday than you did today. So with our management with type 1 diabetes, the really tricky part is that your insulin resistance level can change day to day. And to me, that was one of the biggest aha moments that I had with my own type 1 diabetes, realizing that I could manipulate the amount of insulin that my body needs for the same food yesterday versus today versus tomorrow. There's a few different ways to manipulate things more effectively versus efficiently. If I want to be more insulin sensitive now, I'm going to go work out. Okay, exercise is one of the fastest ways to improve insulin sensitivity. In other words, the amount of insulin required for the transport of glucose into your storage, into the cells, right? So what's really interesting about that is that a lot of us living with type 1 recognize this impact. And in the book, chapter 7, again, we discussed that this is a level 2 blood sugar impact, or a present moment. If I go for a walk right now, I will see blood sugars lowered right now, right? So recognizing that we've got different categories to organize all the blood sugar craziness into past, present, and predicted. Those are the 3 levels of blood sugar impact, right? So if I go for a walk, level 2, that's a present, that's a right now thing. If I walk, I will drop. If I eat, I will spike. If I take insulin, that one's a bit more kind of a blend of the present and the predicted, because insulin takes forever to start working. That's the most maddening thing ever. If that's a frustration for you, comment below, just so I know I'm not alone in this, and be like, insulin takes too long. And then maybe if we get enough of those comments, Lily will see it and they'll do something about it. But ultimately, insulin does take quite a while. And insulin on board sticks around for 3, 4, 5 hours, depending on which type of insulin you're using to manage blood sugar levels. But recognizing that we have 3 different categories to categorize our blood sugar variables. Is it happening right now? Did it already happen, but it's affecting me right now? Or is it about to happen and I need to be prepared for that? Right? So the one that trips up most people, and truly what today's episode is going to be about, is looking at the past variables. So looking into the past, I imagine, what are the things that I've done or not done that are impacting my current blood sugars? I know this sounds crazy. It sounds like some time travel craziness, right? But understanding that if I didn't sleep well last night, not sleeping well is going to increase the cortisol I have in circulation. If my cortisol is increased, which is a stress hormone, then I see an increase of insulin resistance. If I see an increase of insulin resistance, that means that for as long as that variable is in effect, which basically through the rest of the day until you go get some sleep, you're going to see a higher need for insulin. Because remember, if you are insulin resistant, that means you need more insulin to do the same job as you would have previously. So more than the last time, which means if yesterday I needed 20 units of basal or long-acting insulin, and then I didn't sleep, I pulled an all-nighter to study for finals or whatever. It's been a while since I was in college. But let's say I just didn't sleep well. A better example now, I've got a 3.5-year-old daughter, right? If she keeps me up all night for whatever reason, like we got sick a couple weeks ago, none of us slept very well. I was very insulin resistant the next day. In fact, I took essentially enough insulin to cover breakfast and didn't get to eat breakfast. My blood sugars did not budge because I was so insulin resistant. So if we understand that insulin resistant changes day to day based on the past variables, did I not sleep well last night? Another one, did I not work out yesterday? Did I skip my workout, right? I've lost the insulin sensitivity and I'm shifting more towards insulin resistant. Am I really stressed out? Again, cortisol in circulation, the stress hormone. So if there's high amounts of cortisol, stressful work meeting, finances are tricky, your mom got really sick and she ended up in the hospital. If you're really stressed out, that can make you more insulin resistant, which does what? It raises your insulin needs. And if you don't know to look for that, your blood sugars are going to run higher because you're going to think, I took 20 units yesterday, so I'll just take 20 units again today. Should be fine. You'd be wrong, right? Because what worked yesterday does not automatically translate into what will work today. We have to be on top of these level 1 past blood glucose impacts. So if I didn't sleep last night, I might consider taking extra insulin today because not sleeping raises insulin resistance, which means I need that extra insulin just to keep my blood sugars where they're at, right? My baseline. And I hope I'm not losing you. Hold on. This is really important for you to understand because if you can master this, I promise you, most of your blood sugars will start to make more sense. You'll start to go, oh, that's why that happened. That's why I crashed and had an urgent low out of what I thought was nowhere. Turns out it was actually because of delayed onset of peak insulin sensitivity from a workout 6 hours ago. We'll teach you about that in a different episode if that sounds of interest. We'll teach you about all my Ironman stuff, right? But you might think about, why are my blood sugars high now? I haven't had anything to eat in 3 hours. What was that meal high in fats and proteins? Because that can have a delayed impact. In fact, proteins can actually convert into glucose. So this is one of those other variables to consider, right? It was in the past. You don't just forget about those things. They have to stay top of mind. See, diabetes, and this is what I talked about on the news with these anchors, right? Diabetes is crazy complicated. Like, it's absurd. In my opinion, biased opinion, I'll admit that, I think that type 1 diabetes is the hardest autoimmune condition to deal with because there are so many variables to consider, and we are the ones that have to learn how to titrate our own medication that can kill us if we take too much or too little. Both ends of the spectrum, incredibly dangerous. So we have to master our own disease, essentially becoming our own doctors, right? That's insane. Okay. Now, all of that aside, one of the best ways that my clients that I work with privately are taught to organize their thoughts, because it's crazy complicated, is to organize them into one of 3 categories: past, present, predicted. If we can simplify diabetes, in fact, that's why the subtitle of my book is Type 1 Diabetes Simplified. That's my goal. I could talk to you about science all day. Like, I geek out on this stuff. Love talking about it. Why does exercise lower blood glucose? Well, we've got our transporters, we've got different glucose burning ratios, right? We've got muscles soaking up glucose from the bloodstream independently of insulin. It's so cool. But I get that most of you don't care about that. So instead of teaching you the sciencey side of things, I'll just kind of simplify all the processes and go, hey, if you don't sleep well, you might need extra insulin. Oh, you worked out a ton yesterday because you were gardening for 4 hours? Probably going to be more insulin sensitive today, right? And if you can understand that simple concept, looking at your lifestyle variables, the things that you do day to day that probably aren't top of mind when you're considering blood glucose management, because we've only been taught to look at carbs and insulin. Right? But when you look at your lifestyle variables, is my diet clean? Am I overly stressed out? Am I exercising consistently? Am I getting good sleep? All of these things are either stacking you towards insulin sensitivity, like good sleep, clean diet, better exercise, less stress, or they're stacking you towards insulin resistance. If I don't sleep, if I'm highly stressed, if I'm skipping workouts, if my diet is crap. So based on where those are at, the actions that I do or do not take, my baseline insulin needs are going to shift subtly day to day. Primary example of this, and really just the cleanest example I can give you, is that my last Ironman race is a 13 hours and 43 minute race. It's a lot of exercise. I did not need insulin for breakfast the next day, and I had 90 carbs. Why? Because I exercised like an insane person, okay? And I probably will never do that again. It was a really hard day. But I didn't need insulin for a ton of carbs. That's cool, but also crazy, right? Because if I did not know that, if I had not mastered the concepts that I teach in the book, I would have probably not made it past the hospital, right? Because I would have had an urgent low. Had I taken any insulin for that meal, guarantee you, I would have been chasing juice boxes for hours on end. And I know that because I have friends that did have to do that because they did not know the concepts here, because they were not prepared by their doctors. It is on us to do our own research and to master our own diabetes, because all of us are so different. We are so unique in our responses to these things. This is why blood sugar formulas have to be personalized. Okay, this is called the blood sugar freedom formula for a reason. Without formulas, there is no freedom. There is only control through restriction, which is what is taught, unfortunately. It's a great starting point because it will rein in the chaos, but that cannot be the end. I don't want you to depend on restricting carbs or restricting activity or restricting travel or restricting quality of life. There is more for you in life if you choose to take the reins, to master your blood sugars. And it starts with identifying and organizing your 3 levels of blood sugar impact. So again, chapter 7, the blood sugar freedom formula. Read it. Take notes. Everybody who's got the book, I know most of you have it. For those who don't, grab it now. Why haven't you gotten it yet? Literally has everything that you need to know to hit 90% time in range or more. That's the stuff that I've used to stay above 90% time in range for 5.5 years straight while doing all the crazy stuff. Use the book. And I know a lot of you have the book and you just haven't opened it yet. What are you doing? Read the book. Use the tips. Actually implement. I promise you, you will not recognize your blood sugars when you start using the strategies. Go to the community we have for the book readers, right? Go through it with them, compare notes, grow, improve, and find freedom with type 1 diabetes. I can tell you life gets better. But I've seen quite a few people comment that they just don't believe it's possible. And unfortunately, if you don't believe it's possible, especially after seeing me and thousands of other people do exactly what we do from this book, then I can't help you. You have to believe that it's possible. Hold on to hope. And that's the biggest message I can give you, is that there is hope. For a long time, I didn't think there was. I was told by my endocrinologist, oh, that's just how diabetes is. It can't be controlled. That pisses me off that that's being said in medical offices. It can be controlled. It can be done well. It just requires effort on the patient side. We got to become our own doctors. We got to figure it out ourselves. And strategies like these are your first step. They're going to lay out stepping stones. If you can identify the past impacts on blood sugar, I've already told you many of them, right? Did I sleep well? Yes or no? Am I super stressed out right now? Yes or no? Am I maintaining physical activity, exercise? Yes or no? Is my diet clean? Yes or no? Am I super stressed out? Yes or no? Those 5 right there will give you a head start, okay? Keep an eye on your baseline. Now, what do you do with this, right? I want to wrap this up with some actionable insight. What do you do with this information? If I did not sleep well, I am more insulin resistant, I might consider, obviously this is not medical advice, I might consider adding a little extra insulin, either to my basal for the day or to my meals, right? If I was very active, I might consider reducing insulin, right? So after my Ironman, didn't take insulin. I was like, I'm going to eat carbs and then wait to see if it spikes, and then I'll take insulin afterwards. It never spiked. I stayed in the 90s like the whole day. It was crazy. But understanding that you can make adjustments if they are done intentionally and after being well informed. Obviously, setting up your blood sugar formulas is the way to go. I'm a bit biased about that because it saved my life, and I've seen it transform thousands of other type 1 diabetics as well, to give them freedom through formulas. But if you start to identify the pieces that cause your blood sugars to move underneath the surface, everything starts to fall into place. And the next step for you is to start to automate this process, to just build it into your subconscious. So you know, oh, I'm super tired today. I'm going to take some extra insulin. Like, it just becomes part of the process, right? Just like you look at a sandwich and you're like, it's like 40 carbs, right? You're guesstimating. That's not ideal, right? If you want precision control, but you'll get to a place where you can kind of guesstimate your baseline of insulin sensitivity versus insulin resistance. And that is the final lesson I want to give you for today. Your insulin resistance, your insulin sensitivity is not static. It is dynamic. It changes day to day based on your lifestyle variables. Now, most of us lead a pretty routine lifestyle. Most of us eat the same amount of calories per day. Most of us have similar activity levels. Most of us aren't going to do no activity for 2 weeks, then run a marathon, and then do no activity for 2 weeks, right? So understanding that most of us have a pretty similar baseline day to day, but if and when you shift your activity level, your sleeping patterns, your circadian rhythm, any of these things. Like if you go to Disneyland and go walk 20,000 steps in a day, that's probably very different than your standard amount of activity. You will see a shift in your insulin needs. If you can get ahead of that, blood sugars become easier to control, they make a lot more sense, and you, as an outcome, are less frustrated because blood sugars are no longer mysterious. So, I hope that's helpful. I hope you know when I get passionate about these topics, it's because I've seen what life looks like when blood sugars are not controlled, and it is depressing, it is terrifying, and ultimately, it rips your life away from you. It's time to take control, and it starts with your blood sugars. I hope you found this helpful. I hope you stick around, subscribe for more so we can continue these conversations, and I hope to see you in our community for the book readers. We'll see you next week, and keep up the fight.